Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Andy's Witchcraft by me, Sacred Moon. I hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. Today's episode is another fairly personal one to me, but I felt like it could benefit other witches out there who may be going through the same thing. They're going to be sensitive topics. We're going to talk about grief and loss. And so if these topics just too close to home, maybe not watch this episode or listen to this episode for today. So like I said, today we're talking about grief. I want to talk about grief as a ChristoPagan Buddhist, ways that I cope with grief, my beliefs about grief, and so on and so forth. So the inspiration of this episode draws from my many losses that I've experienced since 2022. I have lost 4 relatives, my pet bird, and my best friend, all in that span of 2 years. And so grief has played a huge role in my spiritual journey. It's led me to many questionings and wondering and fears of death and afterlife and all that. And so I figured that this episode was something that needs to be talked about, as I don't think grief is talked about enough. Being a ChristoPagan Buddhist really gave me the spiritual tools that I needed to cope with these losses in my life, and the rituals that I use in my daily life support my adjustment and empower strength and resiliency within me. Yes, I still miss my loved ones. Yes, I still try my best to communicate with them and talk to them and visit their graves and stuff like that. But I really feel like my spirituality helped me manage this a lot better than I would have if I didn't have it. For the purposes of this episode, I feel like it's important to note that grief rituals don't really always have to be so sad and solemn. There is an innate celebratory component involved in these rituals. It's accepting and celebrating that the loved one that died completed their mission on earth and that they can rest peacefully. So as much as it is about the loss, it's also about the life that they lived. And I want to read this quote from one of my references, which are always linked below. Though rituals can be highly formal, such as the kind of rituals seen in many religions, they can also be informally created by people needing to find a way to come to terms with grief. Since people who have suffered some kind of loss often feel as if their lives are out of control, using rituals can help restore that feeling of control and in turn make it easier for them to cope with grief. While rituals can vary widely, the underlying principle of restoring a sense of control is usually the same. So these rituals are about wanting to be in control of our grief, of our feelings. Feelings can be an ugly thing, and grief is not always easy to come to terms with. But by doing these rituals, we can kind of control what we do with our feelings and hopefully find a positive outlet for it. I'd like to start off this episode by talking about, well, I guess it's already started up, but you guys get what I mean. I'd like to talk about grief and death symbols. These are symbols that if you want an altar for your grief or death, which seems a little morbid, but people do it. It's not that as morbid as people think, actually. But yeah, if you want altars or spell ideas, like items to have around you when you're doing these spells, this is a great list to go off of. The first thing on my list are herbs or fruits or essential oils for grief. And the first thing on my list is the red poppy. This is especially common if your loved one passed away from war or warlike circumstances. And red poppy is used to remember the death who fell during World War I and World War II, and it is still a common symbol of grief. Next, we have cypress. Cypress trees appear to reach towards heaven, and their roots grow in a way not to disturb the caskets within the earth. So cypress trees are very common to have in cemeteries. So if you have like a leaf from a cypress tree or a piece of bark or something like that, then you can use that on your altar and give it like as an offering kind of thing. Next, we have hyacinth. This is a symbol of sorrow and pain. So grief is full of that. So this is a great one to have. We have rosemary, which is great for remembrance. So remembering your loved ones, and wanting to, keep that memory alive and solidify it. Rosemary is really good for that. Next on the list, we have evergreen. Evergreen is great for faith in the return of the summer or sun. And so this can also be representative of a return of life and hope. So in times of despair, like grief, evergreen is a great herb to have with you, plant to have with you, to remind you that things will get better and that over time, that grief will maybe not disappear completely, but it will fade and turn into something a little more positive. Next, we have ivy. Ivy is associated with ongoing life, as it tends to live long after the other plants around it have died off. So you can see how these plants, these characteristics, the physical characteristics of plants and herbs in their natural environment can symbolize metaphorically things that you need in your life. So living on and carrying on the memory of your lost loved one, ivy is really good for that. Birch is also really good with that because it's associated with perseverance and new life. Yew is great for grief because it's associated with immortality and longevity. If you believe that the soul of your loved one lives on and is in this universe somewhere, and you believe in the afterlife, yew kind of is that physical symbol of that even if we're gone from our physical bodies, our spirits live on. Apples symbolize immortality as well, and they're known as the food of the dead. For many reasons, it's been in literature for, decades, or since the beginning of time, since literally beginning Adam and Eve. It's known as the food of the dead, and so you can give apples as an offering to your loved ones, or use them in your grief spells and stuff like that. And finally, we have pomegranates. If you're knowledgeable on the mythology about Persephone and Hades, then you would understand why. But yeah, pomegranates are associated with the underworld. And so, again, the afterlife, why not use some pomegranates? The next category I have are animals. Animals associated with grief and death are ravens, vultures, black cats, and bats. I'm sure there are plenty more depending on your culture and heritage and all that. But these are like common ones, at least in the Western countries. Objects. I have 3 main objects you can have on an altar for death and grief. And so the first one are candles. Candles are an obvious one, but they help with both religious and cultural rituals. And lighting a candle for someone who died kind of helps shrink the gap between the living and the deceased. So by lighting a candle, you're kind of lighting the way for your loved one to find you and check in on you. We also have clocks or hourglasses. This is a reminder that our time on earth is limited. So we have to make the best of what we have now, because you never know, right? Not to instill fear in you, right? But it's true, And the third one are skulls, or like other bones. This is just a reminder that we're all bones underneath. And again, our bodies are just a vessel for what lies beneath us. Our souls and our spirits and our energy is where the real us lies. Colors associated with grief and death. I feel like these are common sense ones, but interestingly, it does depend on the culture. Black and gray are typical in the Western cultures, but white is a very, very common one in Eastern cultures. And many people in Asian populations, and other regions of the world, they wear white to funerals. So black, white, and gray, or any of the shades really, are associated with grief and death. I think even some cultures have red as a color representing death. So all of this to say is use the color that you connect with most. What matters more is your individual intention. If wearing blue reminds you of grief, then okay, use blue. If wearing yellow reminds you of grief, do it. Use yellow. And you take these suggestions that I'm giving you with a grain of salt, right? Like your craft is your own, and it's important for you to realize that. Next, we have deities and spiritual entities that you can work with to help with your grief and death and all that. This is very, very. It's my favorite part. I love talking about deities and spiritual entities because I learn a little more about these individuals. The first one is obviously Jesus. Jesus is great. His death and resurrection. It just reminds us, and the fact that his word lives on now. His word lives on, and even after he is long gone. And so Jesus is a great, if you're okay with working with Jesus, he is a great individual to help with that. We also have Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton. I think I pronounced her name right. She is the patron saint of grief. So you want a saint to work with for this, then you use that saint. Yeah, Saint Elizabeth is a wonderful one to help you with that healing process. Next, we have Saint Joseph. He's my main man. I have done a whole entire episode on him. I work closely with him. His Saint Joseph's Day, his holy day, is actually coming up. I'm super excited to be working closely with him during this time. He's really been a comfort in me. Saint Joseph is the patron saint of a happy death. So to find joy in death and to find peace in death, Saint Joseph is really, really good for that. Next, we have Our Lady of Sorrows. So Mother Mary has different aspects to her, depending on the region and all that. And one of them is Our Lady of Sorrows. And so again, she helps alleviate these sorrows. You can pray and work with her to alleviate those sorrows and find joy in life again. So Our Lady of Sorrows, also a wonderful one. Now to steer away a little bit from the Abrahamic pantheon, because I know not all of you are into that, and that is totally fine. You don't have to. But we have Anubis, Osiris, Odin, Hel, Freya, Demeter, Hecate, Hades, and the Morrigan. These are all great deities from different pantheons who can help you on your grief journey, either because they're associated with the underworld or they're associated with death and dying, but they're also associated with resurrection, which means that life goes on, life carries on, and yeah. So now is the most in-depth, I guess, part of the episode. I really go into depth with this because I really love it. It's Bible verses for grief. Reading the Bible and reading about death and dying has really helped, ironically. And so, yeah, so we're going to talk about some of these Bible verses now. The first verse I have is Psalm chapter 34, verse 18. And it says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." So it's just a great reminder that if you work with Yahweh, the Abrahamic God, whatever you call him, he will be close to you during this difficult time, and he's going to help you through it. Next, we have Isaiah chapter 57, verses 1-2. "The righteous perish, and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death." So, again, these are just comforting words to remind you, if you're wondering why someone who was so pure and so great and wonderful, like one of my aunts who passed away, I wondered for ages why God had to take her away from me. And this verse just reminded me that she was so good that she didn't deserve the pain that's on this earth. She really, really didn't. And that thought is comforting to me. And if it doesn't help you, if it makes you roll your eyes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just what helped me. And I'm going to talk about what helped me. And if something else helps you, if a different interpretation helps you, then, go with that one. But this is what I go with. Next, we have Lamentations chapter 3, verses 31 to 32. For the Lord will not reject forever, for if he causes grief, then he will have compassion according to his abundant loving kindness. This is the Bible verse that basically means after every storm there is a rainbow. And that reminder is very, very crucial for me, because even now today I'm having a rough mental health day. I had to force myself to record this episode. It was not fun, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm pushing through, and I know, because I know that this pain is not going to last forever, and something better is going to come along, and I'm going to be okay again. And it's just going to take a lot of time, but I'm going to be okay again. Next, we have Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I think that one's kind of a given. I don't really need to explain that much. But it basically means that if you're grieving, that's okay. You're going to find comfort, whether it's in your spirit team or your deities or other people or yourself. You are going to be comforted. The next Bible verse we have is Matthew chapter 18, verse 14. So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Now that's just, reminds us that it's not in God's plan. Oh my gosh, I'm going to sound a little bit evangelicalish. I'm so sorry. It's not in God's plan for us to suffer forever. Or maybe I'm not going to sound too evangelicalish, because you know what? I don't even believe in hell. Like, I believe reincarnation is hell. So, like, really, yeah. But anyways, it's not in God's plan for us to be stuck in this reincarnation cycle forever and to suffer forever. Like, that's not what he's about. And this Bible verse just really reminded me of that I'm not going to suffer forever, and pain is temporary and grief is temporary, and that is okay. Be in it for a little while, sit in it with it for a little while, but then things will get better. Next, we have Luke chapter 20, verse 36. For they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. Again, that one is kind of a given. Just reminders that our passed on loved ones are kind of equal to angels, in the sense that they were created by God to serve a purpose. And whatever that purpose is, they probably completed it if they're not here anymore. Next, we have John chapter 16, verse 22. Therefore, you too have grief now, but I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice, and no one will take your joy away from you. I love that one, because, yeah, we have grief. But if you believe in the afterlife, you're going to believe that you'll see your loved one again. And you will have immeasurable happiness and joy. And nobody on this planet, in this universe, can take that away from you. And yeah, it sucks to wait for that day. I wish so bad that I could hug my aunts and my best friend and my uncle and all that, and I wish I could hug them again and tell them how much they meant to me, but I have faith that one day we'll be reunited, and that's what's keeping me going. Next, we have Romans chapter 14, verse 8. If we live, we live for the Lord, and if we die, we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. That one is just a given as well. Yeah, Bible verses have helped me a lot with my grief, actually, and it could be because my relatives who passed away, they were all Catholic, and they had very strong faith in God, and so Bible verses are one way that I connect with them, and just remind them that this is what they read. Every night they'd read the Bible, and this is what they believed in, and I think connecting to their faith helps a lot. Next, we have 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 to 4. Who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. And the word affliction here can be substituted with grief. Grief is an affliction. It's painful. And once we are comforted, we can strive to help others as well be comforted. Heal from their grief the way we've been healed. Next, we have chapter 1, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 to 14. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind, who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep with him. Again, this is just a verse that reminds us that our loved ones, that we will see them again, and that there is hope. You can find hope in grief, and I love that. I love that specific word, hope. It's powerful. And once you have it, it can't be taken from you. And finally, we have Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. I love that one. No more death or mourning. When you turn to your spirit guides and they comfort you and they wrap their arms around you, so to speak, there's no more pain. And that's how I feel with Yahweh, and Asherah and Buddha and Lucifer and Kali and Jesus and Saint Joseph and Mother Mary, and I feel that. I feel like one big group hug, and it's amazing, and it makes me feel like I'm gonna be okay, and reminds me that my loved ones would not want me to suffer like this. So, yeah. Those are all the Bible verses that I put down. There's obviously way more than that, and you can do research to find more. But yeah, I hope that helped a bit. I know a lot of the things I was saying when I was first figuring out my spirituality. I would roll my eyes at people and be like, okay, yeah, blah, 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 blah. So hopefully there wasn't too much of that. Next, I want to talk about some Buddhist traditions for grief. So, similar to witches and Christians, many Buddhists believe that a person's body can receive gifts and messages after they pass away. So, when someone in the Buddhist community does pass away, people will gather around them to pray and bestow presents. Buddhist mourning rituals last up to 100 days after the person's passing, and services are traditionally held on the 3rd, 7th, 49th, and 100th days. The first 49 days after a loved one's death are the most important in Buddhism, because we believe it takes a total of 49 days for one's spirit and energy to be fully released and for them to be reincarnated into whatever their next cycle is. Many times the family attends their local Buddhist temple every 7 days, and usually it's on Sunday mornings, for 7 weeks, and that is a total of 49 days between the passing and the end of the 7-week period. But of course, we're human and we will mourn our loved ones for the rest of our lives, and that is okay. What matters is what we do with that grief. That is the important part. In Buddhist traditions, cremation is the traditional way to go about it, but only after 7 days have passed. I don't really know why that is, but I'm sure there is a spiritual belief surrounding it. I definitely have to look up more about it to find out. But Buddhism is actually one of the cultures where mourners will wear white, and the service and the casket are very simple, not showy. They don't have a slew of flowers or anything like that, because death is a very sensitive topic, and the emotions are fragile. It's the last thing we need to focus on earthly attachments. So we make it the least likely to show any form of attachment as possible. For the service, the casket or remains are placed at the front of the room. And when I say remains, sorry, I forgot the word cremated remains. So the urn with the person's ashes. So either that or the casket are placed in front of the room with an altar nearby. And the altar will hold the person's photo, a picture or the statue of Buddha, candles, flowers, fruit, and incense. Any flowers or wreaths given to the family by mourners can also be displayed, although again, because it doesn't focus too much on materialistic possessions, that's not super common. When entering the space, mourners approach the altar, they bow their heads, and they pray a bit, and they reflect at the altar for a moment before taking their seats. In some Buddhist traditions, memorial practices are observed every year to commemorate the departed loved ones. And I love that because it's very similar to what goes on in my church, although I don't really like to call it my church because I'm forced to go. I don't really want to go. But in Roman Catholicism, families also dedicate masses for their passed on loved ones on the anniversary of their passings. So the 1 year, the 2 year, the 3 year, and so on and so forth. And in addition to all this, families may take the time to visit and clean grave sites, which I think is just an amazing form of altruism. Non-Buddhists might think that the acceptance of death as a natural process means that grief is minimized or discouraged in Buddhist traditions, but it's not the case. Buddhists recognize grief is universal. Suffering is inevitable. That is the whole point of Buddhism, is that there is suffering. That's the first noble truth. There is suffering. And so we acknowledge that there is grief and it is causing suffering. But we have to learn to carry on without our loved ones. And the Buddhist belief that there is no beginning and no end just shows that our loved ones are never gone, because we carry them on with us always, and their energy is out there somewhere in the universe, some form of reincarnation. So those are Buddhist traditions for grief, and I hope you guys saw some overlapping between Buddhism and Christianity. I know I did, and I found that pretty damn cool. I am going to end off this episode with witchy things that you can do to cope with grief. So these can be broom closet friendly, some of them are, and some of them are a little more not extravagant, but they're overtly witchy. So whatever you decide to do, I hope this gives you a variety of options for whatever your situation is, whether you're a broom closet witch or not. I really hope that this helps. So numero uno, number one, maintaining an ancestor altar and setting aside time weekly to clean it and talk to them. That is one of those more broom closet friendly stuff, because the altar can be anything. It can just be putting their pictures on your desk and calling it a day. You can add flowers and stuff like that to it. And anybody with a if you're in the broom closet, your family may not really think much about it, because you're obviously going to miss your loved ones. That's obvious. You're obviously going to want to commemorate them. So you can have a simplistic altar for them. And as you clean it and do the dust in your room and stuff like that, you could talk to them, whisper or out loud or even in your head, and they will hear you. My belief is that they hear you. Number two, visiting the cemetery. Not only great for your loved ones, but I also like to walk around and say aloud the names that I read on stones, and that helps remember those who may be forgotten. I specifically keep an eye out for any stones or that are really, really old, or any stones that haven't been maintained in a while. So if there's long grass around it, showing that maybe they haven't been visited so long. If there's no flowers, no wreath or anything on it, that shows that people may not have visited them. in a while, I like to just read their names out loud and say, like, may you rest in peace. Just a quick word of appreciation for their life on this earth. Number 3, creating a memory scrapbook and filling it with photographs, letters, postcards, notes, or other significant memorabilia from your life together. And as you're putting this scrapbook together, you can make it as witchy as possible. You could put sigils in it. That there's a lot of sigils that can represent grief and healing and death. You could put, protection sigils so that your loved ones are protected in the afterlife. You can do all sorts of things to make it witchier, or you could just make a simple scrapbook, and that's a broom closet friendly thing to do. And then that way you can be content. And yeah, this suggestion is not always 100% witchy, but there's always ways to make it witchy. Even if you press flowers in it. Is that what it's called? When you press flowers. And then the flowers can be from the list of herbs that I said. That's it. That's another idea. So, yeah, I like that suggestion a lot. Number 4, spending time listening to your loved one's favorite music or creating a special mix of music that reminds you of that person. Again, it's not the super witchiest thing to do, but it can be. Especially if, like, while you're doing divination, which is another alternative, or another suggestion to cope with grief. But if you're doing divination and you play their favorite music while you're doing that, and that connects you to them. Or if you're cleaning your room and you play their music, it connects you to them. And I think in that way, connecting with someone who has passed on is witchy in of itself. So, I mean, yeah. Number 5, planting a tree or flowers in your loved one's memory. Gardening can be a super witchy thing, especially if it's like a cypress tree, like I mentioned. Cypress trees are very, very common in cemeteries, and all that. And so planting a tree or flowers in your loved one's memory is a great way to remember them. And there are tons of ways to make it witchy with the symbolism of the herbs. You can use the leaves of those trees in your spell work. If you choose to do spells later on, and so there are tons of ways that this particular idea can be witchy, and it's totally possible, especially if you're a green witch. It's a great suggestion if you're a green witch. Number 6, hold a memorial ritual in the individual's honor. This can be as simple as lighting a candle with his or her name, like, carved on it. You can do that, or like written on it. Or as complex as inviting a community together to hold a vigil and offer blessings and offerings to the person's spirit as they cross over. Now, I did something like this for my best friend who passed away. I invited our mutual friends to celebrate her birthday in mid-February. And we went to the cemetery. We sat at her grave all together and talked about her and laughed with her. And then each of us had a few minutes alone with her. I read a letter I wrote to her. It was a very emotional day, but it was much, much needed. And then right after, we went for lunch and we just talked about our lives and hers and holding space for our lost friend. And I think that was a wonderful memorial ritual, and I would not have traded that memory for anything in the world. And like I said, this ritual does not have to be super formal. For me, I didn't really push my spirituality onto my friends. I didn't talk about my beliefs and where she is in the afterlife and stuff like that. But we didn't really have to, because we could just process the grief and acknowledge the afterlife. And like, even my friend said, oh, we like to think that she is in the stars, because that's what my friend who passed away always said, that like she was very attached to the stars and the universe and stuff like that. And I think that is the witchiest possible belief you could ever have. But yeah, there are tons of ways to have a memorial and make it witchy. You could do a spell work, a cord cutting for them, where you can cut their bond to this earth so that you can set them free, whatever you think is best for them, whatever they think is best for them too, if you can find a way to connect to them. Like I said, for number 7, through divination, for example, tarot readings. I do tarot readings to communicate with my passed on loved ones all the time, that is a witchy thing. And that is something that I love doing, and I will continue to do for the rest of my life, really. Number 8, a ritual for grief. This is one that I found from one of the many resources I have linked below. But what you'll need is a black candle, a silver candle, items from your passed on loved ones, incense, a pen, and bay leaves. So at your altar or anywhere really, you could be outside, inside, whatever, you call on your spirit team to help sustain you. Light the black candle in honor of your grief, and light the silver candle in honor of love and hope. Light the incense and let its grounding power envelop you. Write messages and blessings on the leaves in honor of your grief. So you could even write messages to your passed on loved ones. And then you can burn them one at a time and watch the smoke move upward as prayers for blessings and comfort are released. And hopefully your loved ones will get the message. And I love that ritual so much. Like, the balance between grief and hope. Like, you guys know me. I've already talked about this many times. Hope is such a powerful thing that we need. Number 9, a dumb supper. This is a meal held in silence with a place setting, including a food and a drink for the dead. This is very common to do at Samhain. So Samhain is, very close to the Day of the Dead, and this is a ritual that is commonly done around them. But who says you have to wait till Samhain to do it? You can do it any time of the year. An anniversary especially, like if it's a birthday or the anniversary of their passing, that I think that's important to show them that they are remembered. Number 11? Am I on number 11 or 10? Yeah, I don't know. Whatever number I'm on. Oh my gosh, I lost track. Making a grief essential oil. So you can mix any ingredients from the herbs or essential oils I listed above. And typically the oil, I like to use olive oil. I think that's pretty cool. Oil is skin safe to use as well. But yeah, you mix any ingredients into the olive oil or whatever oil you use. And you can wear it whenever you want to remember the happy times with your passed on loved ones. So I would also add for this, like, grief essential oil to hopefully remember the happy times. I like to add orange peels. Orange peels are really good. Or like at least squeeze like oranges in it and stuff like that. Although I don't know if that's skin safe. I should probably research that. But I haven't made my own essential oil yet. But yeah, like I like to add like orange peels and stuff like that, because orange is such like a happy ingredient, a joyful ingredient, an optimistic ingredient. And so if you want something to bring joy, I love to use orange peels for that. And the last suggestion I have for you is going to be the most obvious. It's going to make your eyes roll to the back of your heads. And that's okay. I'm going to say it anyways. Give it time. Give it time. That's it. Grief is a process. We're never going to fully heal from our grief. It's not going to be cured. You're always going to remember your loved ones. You're always going to miss them. But with time, we're going to live our lives to the fullest purpose. You're going to remember their memory with a smile on your face instead of tears in your eyes. Although maybe there will be always tears in your eyes. Hopefully there'll be happy tears of the happy memories and not sad tears from the circumstances of their passing. And you will be able to share the memory of your passed on loved one. You're going to remember them, and it's going to be a wonderful experience for you. And I truly hope that you guys get that experience. That is the end of this episode. Thank you for listening and sticking around. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you like this episode and you want updates for more, you can follow me on social media. The link's in my link tree below. You can also join my Discord server for Witches of All Paths of Life, Crystal Caverns. That link is also in the link tree below. If you want to support my small divination reading business by buying a reading off of me, I have to save up some money. I'm going back to school in the fall. So excited. And tuition is going to cost me an arm and a leg. So if you want to help me save up that would be appreciated. I would love each and every one of you to do that. And then if you have a video idea, an idea of a topic you want me to talk about on this podcast, you could click the Linktree link below, click the Google form, video ideas, give me the video idea, and I will do it as soon as I can. And then, yeah, I believe that is everything that I have to say. Thanks for listening to my ending spiel. I love each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Blessed be everyone. Have a wonderful day, week, month, and year.